Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar by Philantropia about how to write a winning proposal. My name is Eva Wieners. I'll be your trainer today. We have a couple of housekeeping rules that probably most of you, if you've ever taken a webinar with us, already know. We will have time for questions at the end. So I have a prepared presentation that I want to go through with you, but we will have time for questions in the end. I would ask you to use the Q&A box for questions for me, because you can use the chat for networking with each other, like you're already doing, introducing yourself, etc. But if you put your questions there, it's very difficult for me to find them in the end. So please use the Q&A box for any questions that you might have for me and that I will get to in the end. Yeah, and I think with that, we can get started right away. Again, today's topic is building winning proposals for donor success. So how do you write a proposal? What are the parts of the proposal? That's what we're going through today. Yeah, my name is Eva. I'm from Germany. I've been working with Philantropia for, I realized, almost 10 years, a long time. And I'm a geographer. I did my PhD in geography in the sustainability of project development in Nepal. And I've worked in Nepal for 7 years, in South America for 2 years. And since 2019, I've been back in Germany working here, mostly as an individual consultant and trainer. Yeah, so this is the fundraising cycle or the funding cycle. Maybe you know this picture because we keep showing it. Often we have 5 parts to it. This is the simple one with 3 parts to it. What is important to understand about this is that fundraising is more than just proposal writing. Many people that contact us or that we talk to have the belief that proposal writing is fundraising. Well, it is, but it's just part of it. There's more steps towards winning a grant and being successful than just writing a great proposal. Definitely is part of it. It's important and necessary, but it's not all that is to it. So the first step to become a successful fundraiser, to win grants for your NGO, is to do great donor research. So step number 1, finding good donors. Finding donors that are a good fit for your organization, that have the same values, that want to fund in your country, want to fund the kind of work you do, etc. So the first step towards success is to really find a great fit, someone who's interested to work with you. The second step, still before actually sending a proposal or writing a proposal, is the engagement step. So you do have to engage with potential donors. You have to do networking. You have to talk with potential donors, with foundations, introduce yourself, develop a relationship, etc. Because in the end, what you have to remember is that people give to people, even though sometimes it feels like when we apply with a big foundation that it's like a machinery or something very, very technical, but in the end, it's people that make the decisions there as well. So if you can connect with someone, if you can develop a human connection, a relationship, that's always super helpful. Not because they will immediately choose you if you just have a relationship with them, definitely not because of that, but because they might remember you better, they might understand you better, they might have a little bit more of a favorable look if they already know you're a good partner. And you also have to remember that a lot of funding is actually negotiated. So given not through an open process where everybody can apply, but negotiated because donors want to fund specific topics, specific areas of work. And only after that stage, when you have engaged with potential donors, potential partners, you can move to the next one, which is the application stage. So only then can you apply, because then you know what you should put into an application. You know what the proposal should look like. You know what the donor is looking out for, what they're interested in, what kind of work they want to support, and what kind of organization they're looking for as a partner. So then you get to this third stage of applying. There's different forms to apply. Sometimes donors will ask you for a full proposal, sometimes for a concept note, sometimes for a pitch deck, maybe. But basically, this is the stage where you engage and actually apply, actually send them something. And ideally, you have learned a lot of information about those donors beforehand so that you know what they want to see, and you'll be able to provide exactly that in the proposal. But oftentimes they will also provide you with a form. But yeah, this depends a lot on the donor and on the process that you are individually going through. So today, we will talk about the normal proposal. So what's a normal proposal? That's a bit, maybe that is a bit misleading. There is no normal proposal. Every single proposal needs to be adjusted specifically to the donor's needs. So you can never send out a proposal, the same proposal, to different donors, to different potential partners. You always have to adjust it so that it's a perfect fit for that specific donor. You should always make sure that their priorities are reflected, that buzzwords that they maybe want to use or specific words that they are using throughout, that they are reflected, etc. Oftentimes, you will also get a format that the donor wants you to follow. So they will give you, like something, a form that you just have to fill out that has all those sections that you need to cover. Or they give you very specific guidelines where they tell you what they want you to cover. And in those cases, obviously, you always have to use that form. You always have to follow those guidelines. That is crucial because not only does it make it easier for the donor to compare proposals when you follow the guidelines, but oftentimes you will be completely disqualified if you don't follow the guidelines or if you don't use the provided form. So that is super important. Whenever the donor provides you with something, you have to use that. Usually, even if it's a form, it will cover the same sections that we will talk about now, but they might be in a different order. They might be called something different. Usually the information that we will talk about today is exactly the same information that donors want to see in any kind of document that you send them, because it is the information needed to understand the project. But it might be in a different order, they might call it differently, and then you should always use that same terminology. Repeat their structure, use their headings, etc., because that way it's much easier for the donor to compare and see where there's actually overlay, see where you can actually support them and what they want to achieve. So for example, if you would usually say, call the section where you explain why your project is necessary, the project background, but the donor is asking for a justification, then just call it justification because it's the same, but that is the terminology the donor uses, and that's what you want to do as well, to kind of repeat back to them what they have been saying. So again, if you have no requirements, if the donors don't give you any guidelines, and they just tell you, send us a proposal, then this is the structure you can follow. But obviously, you can also make a different one that is structured differently. Usually, again, you would have to cover the same information that these sections cover, but if you put them in different order, if you structure them differently, doesn't really matter as long as it's not against the guidelines the donor gives you. Usually, you would start with an introduction or a summary, then move to the project rationale, background, justification, whatever you want to call it. It's the explanation of why the project is necessary. Then you talk about project beneficiaries or project participants, target group, then goals and objectives. So what do you want to achieve with the project? And strategies and activities, which basically means how you want to achieve it, how you want to get there. Then we have project results. So what will be the long-term impact of your project? What are the changes that you want to achieve with your project? The budget. How much money do you need for it? How do you want to spend that money, etc. What is every single budget line? A timeline, how long will it take you to finish that project? What are milestones along the way? Usually you would include something like a monitoring and evaluation plan, depending on the size of the project. This might be very simple. The example we're going to talk about today is also a simple example, but this can also become very, very complicated. And a sustainability plan at the end. Monitoring and evaluation, sometimes they will ask you for a log frame. It's not strictly the monitoring and evaluation plan, but it's usually based on that. But that's a bit more sophisticated. And if you want to learn more about how to develop log frames, we do have specific courses about that on our website. And we are offering webinars about that topic as well very frequently. So if you want to learn more about log frames, please check out our website, philantropia.org, because we do have some stuff specifically about that. Yeah, so let's get started by going through all the mentioned sections one by one to see what goes in there and why they are important. Even before the introduction or the summary, you have kind of the front page. And this is something I think we'll talk a little bit in the end about, but even before a donor reads anything in your proposal, they see your proposal. So they see the front page. And on the front page, usually you would have the title, which is important, and just the general impression of your proposal. So I always recommend to keep the front page tidy, professional, clear-cut, nothing too fancy, no clip art, no weird fonts, etc. Just keep it professional, because that's always the best look, and that is always the best way to present. And then the first section that the first text section of your proposal would be the introduction or the summary. The summary basically covers who wants to do what, where, when, why, and how. So those questions that we all know from school. And that need to be covered in a good report, no? The introduction or the summary is super important in your proposal. So you should really take the time to make it a good one, because obviously the summary is the first thing that anybody will read if they open your proposal, but also you have to kind of think of the structure of how many foundations decide who to give grants to. So usually your proposal will get read by a grants officer, and they read, I don't know, hundreds, and make a short list for another gremium to decide about. So this could be the board, or could be any other group of people that decide out of that short list who will get chosen. So first of all, obviously, it's important that this is interesting so that the project manager, the grant manager, keeps reading. Because if the summary is already super boring and not engaging at all, or maybe incorrect, or has tons of mistakes, then it's very difficult to get the project manager to keep reading, but at least they have a little bit more time. But then when they shortlist proposals, the board has to decide, has to make many, many, many decisions in a short meeting. So usually they will only look at the summaries to make their decision. So the summary needs to be good. It should never have like typos. You should always take the time to proofread to make it look really good. It's not the first thing you should write, and it's not the very last thing you should write. Or maybe it's the last thing you should write, but not under pressure. So if you start with a summary, you probably don't know how your project will look like in the end. Maybe there's some changes along the way when you work on the proposal, can take some time. So there might be things that change. So you want to see that reflected. So if you write the summary first, maybe those changes are not reflected. But you shouldn't write it at the last minute either. I always remember when I finished my master's thesis, we had this deadline by when we had to submit. And I was at the printer's office and printed my thesis that had been done for a couple of days. And there were people in that printer's office while the body of text was printing, they were still writing the summary because they're still working on it last minute. And I'm sure that even though their work might have been amazing, that they have lost points on that bad summary, because if you do it so rushed, it's never going to be good. So take your time for this and give it the importance that it's due, because that is the part that will probably get read most in the whole process. So that's the introduction, and from there you move to or the summary, and from there you move towards explaining the entire project that you're proposing. And usually you start by giving an introduction to why this is necessary. So you give the project background, sometimes it's called justification, rationale, whatever you want to call it. But this is the explanation of why this project is necessary. And again, this is a super important area because, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Because for us, if we work in projects, sometimes we've worked in this for years, maybe we are from the communities that we work with, we have close connections, close ties. So the why of our work is super clear, and it's probably super clear to everyone that's working with us as well. But that's not necessarily the case for everyone connected to this. If you apply with a donor that's maybe based in another country, and they do fund the kind of work that you do, but they don't have necessarily that insider knowledge, it's really, really important that you explain very well why that problem is a problem, and what the connections are. So you need to start with a problem statement, and then you have different things that can play into this. So explain why this problem is a problem. It's not necessarily clear to everyone. Not everything is that clear cut. You can use case studies to explain the whole thing, if there's space for it, if you have a space and enough words to cover that. You can also bring into play your own history. So why are you the perfect partner to implement this? Why you, basically, is the question here. What do you bring to the table? What's your experience? And maybe you can also introduce success stories of the work that you have done, also in the form of case studies. If you can, use data to explain why this problem is a problem, where it came from, what the root causes are, what the effects are. So if there's any government data, official data, census data that you can rely on, perfect. If it's data from your own project, that also works very well, as long as you explain where it came from and what the framing is. But the better you can prove that this issue that you want to tackle is an issue, the easier it is. Because again, if the person who reads your proposal doesn't understand why this issue you want to tackle is an issue, then it doesn't matter how amazing your proposal is or the rest of it is, because they will not give it the time of day. If they don't understand that this is an actual problem, then why should they think about how to solve it? And for me, for example, I remember one time I applied, I was working in Nepal, and we wanted to apply for money to plant grasses next to the houses of people, so they would have fodder for the animals. But we were applying to a foundation that works for women's rights and education. And I did not explain the problem very well, because I didn't draw the connection well enough between having grass for the animals next to the house and having a better education. Because in Nepal, as some of you might know, mostly the women and the girls are responsible for collecting the fodder for animals. And if the grass is far away, girls don't go to school, because instead they have to go out and search for that fodder. And for me, because I had been living in Nepal for 5 years in the village, that was so clear that I didn't take the time to really explain that very well. And the donor didn't understand, because they're not from those communities. They didn't live it. So in that case, they were polite enough to ask me, and I got a second chance, but many donors will not be that polite and nice. So really explain the connections, why the issue that you are solving is such a huge issue, why it needs solving. Maybe also explain what would happen if you don't solve it, if it stays the way it is. This is usually the first section, really taking time to explain the why of this project. The next area you often talk about or you need to cover is the target group or the project participants. Who is taking part in this project? Obviously, the target groups are very interesting for donors because sometimes they have told you beforehand or they're very strict on what kind of target groups they want to work with. So you need to be precise here. You need to tell them who you're planning to work with. You have three kind of groups here of target groups. The first one, stakeholders at the top. Usually you don't have to say who the stakeholders are in a project proposal, so you can leave that out. But for you and for your project planning, especially if you're writing a project plan, it is very important that you do know who the stakeholders are and who the people that have a stake, that have interest, and that have something to decide in your project. So those might be other local organizations, political parties, schools, NGOs, etc. But all the organizations, all the people with power that have a stake in your project as well. But again, usually you don't have to line those out in the proposal, but it's still important you know them. For the proposal, you need to know who your indirect participants or your indirect target group are and your direct target group. And those two groups usually also need a number attached to it. So the donors want to know how many people are in those groups. Direct participants means people that directly work with your project, that are directly involved, that you address, that you talk to, that you involve in your project. So if you run trainings, for example, then the people who attend the trainings are your direct participants, the direct target group. The people who, when you give out materials for, let's say, school supplies, the students who receive the school supplies are your direct participants. When you build a hospital, the people that attend those health checkups or whatever are the direct participants. Usually it's quite easy to at least estimate the number of the direct participants because usually you can count them, you have some point of contact with them, some kind of rapport. Indirect participants are other people that also get affected by the project, usually positively, but that do not necessarily enter direct contact with your project. So if you train farmers in agricultural techniques, then the indirect target group would be the families of the farmers, the communities, because then if they can produce more food, then there's less problems with family, etc. If you change, other economic factors, if you build a road, everybody using that road is an indirect participant. Everybody who still benefits, but through the second party of direct participants from your project. Those are the indirect participants. And again, this is a bit more difficult to measure often because you just simply don't know. And we always recommend to come up with a high number here. Well, not a high number, that's too broadly said, but the highest possible realistic number that you can come up with, because what donors sometimes do is they look at the budget, how much money you want to spend, and then they look at the number of participants, indirect and direct, and divide it to see how much money would you be spending per person. So if the number is very, very low, then obviously you would be spending more per person. And that's not the only thing they look at. That won't make the decision, but it can contribute. So that is why that number should be high, but obviously realistic. You can't say everybody living in the community is an indirect beneficiary because they just live there or stuff like that. It needs to be rooted in reality, so it needs to be a realistic number. Then we get to the next section, which describes the goals and objectives. So what you want to achieve. This is crucial that you understand the difference between the section where you explain what you want to achieve and the section where you explain how you want to achieve it. So here you talk about your goals and objectives. What are the changes that you want to afflict to in a community, the positive changes? And in the next section, we'll also look at is you explain how you want to do that. So often when we get proposals either to proofread or through competition or just sent to us, I see in the section where goals and objectives should be explained, people ask, or people say, okay, our goal is to run a training. Well, that's not the goal. That's what they want to do. That's the activity they want to do. The goal is that people learn something. That's what happens next. This is very closely connected to results. So sometimes you won't even have two different sections in goals and objectives and results, and you will see how they are connected. But the differentiation between how and what is super important, because that I think that is one of the most common mistakes in proposal writing at the structural level. Sorry, at the structural level that we see, people mixing up activities and objectives. So here you have four words that you've probably all read at some point: the vision, mission, goals, and objectives. And those three words all describe what an organization wants to achieve, but on a different level. So the vision is the broadest level that you can think of. It's usually not found in a proposal. A vision would be something to like eradicate world hunger, something that is a dream very far away, can probably not be achieved by one organization. The vision that kind of guides you. And we have the mission, which is more specific already, but still will not be found in a proposal necessarily, because the proposal will focus on the project itself, and your mission is still too broad to be achieved by one project. It's maybe could be something that you, if you work with your organization for 10, 20 years, maybe you can achieve your mission. It could be whatever, getting 90% of children in your community into schools, or improving access, improving health, etc. Something that can be achieved, but definitely not within one project. And then goals and objectives, which are sometimes also called um, overall goal, specific goal, overall objective, specific objective. Donors kind of mix those words a bit sometimes, but those are things that are important for your project proposal and for your project, because the goal is usually what you want to achieve with the project, and the objectives are things that go along the way, that you need to achieve to then achieve your goal. And the goal is the thing that you want to achieve with your project. When your project ends after 1 or 2 years, you should have achieved the goal of this project, which might be more kids in school, less malnutrition, etc. Some specifically formulated goal that can be measured, that you will have achieved. And the objectives are things along the way. So you usually have 2 or 3 objectives, and if you achieve those two, they contribute towards your goal and lead to you achieving your goal. Objectives are things that you would also use um, in your in the log frame, to go along and to show the success of your project. Objectives have to be SMART. We look at what that means as well, because they are also used to evaluate your project. So you need to be able to achieve your objectives to later say, yes, our whole entire project was a success and this worked for us. So what are SMART objectives? SMART means they have to be specific in the way you formulate them. So you have to say who, what, where, when, which, and why, those questions again. Sometimes an objective will not cover everything, but it needs to be specific. Measurable, so you need to be able to track the progress on that objective. So your objective should not be achieve a better education for kids, but it should be specific. Who, for whom, which kids, what do you want to achieve? Okay, better grades, maybe. Where, which community, by when, a date. Um, which and why, okay, they don't have to always be in that objective, but these others need to be. And then you have to decide how you want to track them. So how can you measure? If you want to measure a change in the quality of, or in the, what's that called? Not quality, but in the grades of kids, you can of course say before they had the median was D and now the median is C. So you can measure that way, or you can count how many people attend something. You can even measure how content people are. You can try to measure changes in attitude, etc. But you have to think of ways to make your objectives measurable. They need to be achievable, so things that can be achieved and that are relevant for the goal that you want to achieve. So sometimes we see objectives that have nothing to do with the goal of the entire project, but they are easy to measure. So sometimes people take them in, but they have to work towards your goal to achieve that goal, and time bound. So they have to be achieved by a specific point in time, because otherwise, even if you can measure, if you don't say by when this change should have happened, then that's not going to be helpful at all. This is what SMART objectives means. So now we've defined what we want to achieve. What is the change that we want to achieve? And we'll look at that with results a little bit more in a moment. But then we also have this how part. How do we want to get there? And this is what organizations usually are great at, describing how you want to do something, describing activities that you want to do. Sometimes activities are lumped together under strategies. So there's different strategies that you can follow to achieve the same goal. So for example, to achieve the goal, enhancing the education of children, you could either follow the strategy of training the teachers, you could follow the strategy of handing out materials, or you could follow the strategy of creating awareness amongst parents. Those are three different strategies with their own activities that lead to the same goal. So you usually choose the strategy and then have activities under that strategy. If the strategy is infrastructure, then you would have the activity, maybe get a school bus, give out school materials, and pay for the school uniform or stuff like that. If your strategy is creating awareness amongst parents and teachers, it could be activity 1 could be a teacher training, activity 2 could be an awareness workshop with parents, and activity 3 could be a training of a couple of parents that could then kind of carry that knowledge. So those are the actual things that you do in your project. And I know this is usually the easiest part because you usually have a very great and good idea of what you want to do. But again, keep your focus here on the actual things you want to do in your project, not what you want to achieve, because that's the other section. And then we have results, which again are closely connected to the objectives, because that's basically the change in the communities for the target group that you want to achieve. So you have three different categories of results. The output, outcome, and impact. Output is very short term. Output is usually the direct result of an activity. If the activity is running trainings, the output is people attended the training and learned something. The outcome is midterm. So what happens next? People went to the training. Okay, they learned something. Okay, what do they do with that knowledge? Do they change their attitudes? Do they change their behavior? Maybe even their living circumstances? What happens next? That's the outcome. And then very long term, what are the changes on a society level that happen next? That's the impact. So that is really long term. And those are kind of the three categories of project results that we have. As you can see, they're really closely connected to the objective and the goal, because usually the objective is tied to the outcome. So the objective will be very similar to the outcome. The impact will be tied to the goal. So here's another way of putting this together. We have this kind of pyramid that goes up. At the bottom, we have the activities, the things we do in the project, the activities we carry out. They result in an output. So the output are the goods and services provided by the project, the training provided, the goods passed out, etc. Those two categories are both controlled by the project, because your project controls if the activities are carried out and if the people take part in it. The outcome is the midterm behavior change, and the impact, as I said, long-term behavior change, long-term society change. One project will never achieve a full impact because we don't operate in a vacuum. The project will only contribute towards that impact, that big societal change. Those two categories are both controlled by the target group, because you can make people attend. You can run a training, well, you can't force people to attend, but you can make it very attractive so people want to attend. But then if the people use their knowledge and actually change anything about their own lives or their families' lives, that's out of your control. So that is not in your control anymore. And much more the impact, that's not in your control, because there might be many other factors that influence here. Then we have assumptions as well. That's a word from the log frame. Those are things that are necessary for the project to succeed, which are largely beyond the control. So they need to happen for the output, outcome, and impact to actually take place. In a normal proposal, if you don't develop a log frame, you don't really have to think too much about assumptions. Otherwise, those are things like the political system will stay stable, whatever teachers that we train will stay at the school, things that you assume that need to happen for the next steps to come true. Now we get to the budget, which often is one of a favorite section of everyone, I know. Well, no, that's obviously a joke. Most people I know that work as fundraisers do not like designing budgets, which is understandable because it's a bit different to play with the numbers than with words. A budget should be a description of the project in numbers. So an accountant, if they look at your budget, if they read your budget, they should be able to understand your project because it should exactly reflect, obviously, what you have written in your proposal in the text part. So really make sure that the budget reflects everything that you have written in your proposal. We have two ways of structuring the budget here. Left side is activity-based. On the right side, it's line item based. The difference is the activity-based budget follows the activities that you do. So you have, in this example, an annual conference, training volunteers. Those are two activities, and you kind of just follow those activities and list out all the cost for that. Line item based means you lump together the cost for specific line items for specific types of costs. So here we have personnel, services, and other costs. So it's the same budget, the same numbers, but obviously comes together differently. Here the trainers for both of these activities are combined. The transportation for both of these activities is combined here. That's the basic difference. Some donors like to see line item based budgets because I think they can only spend a specific percentage on personnel, etc. But it's always easier to start with the simple budget, the activity based one, and then convert, because otherwise you just will forget things. For me, it's always useful to go through the activities with an accountant, with a team member, one by one, to think what cost will occur. My thing is, in the beginning, I always forgot the transportation cost, so I'm super cautious about that now. But yeah, going through this, ideally with someone else, trying to figure out the correct prices from the get-go is very, very important. We will have a full course on budget development in December. So if that's something interesting for you, please sign up for that course. We haven't set a date yet. I'm not 100% sure. If we did, maybe my team can put the link in the comments right now. But we will have a full course for this, and because there's obviously lots to it, and we could spend hours on this. Then we have the timeline, either a super simple timeline with just one activity going through, or at the top, this is a Gantt chart. So this can be used as a work plan as well, because it shows who has to do what and how those different activities kind of depend on each other. So if what needs to be done for the next activity to be able to start. And here, obviously, you will also include milestones for reporting maybe, or for other things. But developing a timeline is very important, and it doesn't have to have the definite dates like at the bottom. It can also be relative, like month 1, month 2, month 3, but it shows the donor how you plan to go about things, how much time you plan to spend on which activity, and also shows if you have a lot of knowledge about what you want to do if you're the specialist here. Here we have a super simple example of M&E, monitoring evaluation, that of course looks a lot like a log frame, but again, a log frame is a bit more complicated, and we do have specialized courses for that. Basically, in the monitoring and evaluation, you tell donors exactly where you want to make progress, where you want to change things. So you start with an area where you want to make the change, and define indicators. So here, the teacher training, attendance rates, those are indicators. You have a baseline value where you start. So how is the situation right now? And then you have a target value to where you want to go, where you want to get, which change you want to make. And you have a milestone along the way. What can you achieve after 1 to 3 years, 1 to 3 months, whatever the timeline of your project is, where you need to have the milestone. Sometimes milestone reporting is also requested by the donor, so they will then let you know by when they want to know something. But yeah, and this gives you structure to report on your project, and shows how you want to progress and how you want to achieve those values that you define here. And then in the end, we have the sustainability plan, which is the section where usually many people, when they hear sustainability, they think of the environmental sustainability, and that is obviously super important in a proposal. It should be a cross-cutting issue that you definitely cover. But often when the sustainability plan itself, or the sustainability section, or this question, sometimes it's also framed in a way that just says, how would you cover follow-up cost, is more about the sustainability of the project itself. So how can you sustain your project long-term when the grant runs out? Obviously, donors want to know if they're making a one-off investment that will be lost afterwards, or if you have plans and a good idea on how to sustain the project. Project sustainability basically has 3 parts. You have the financial sustainability. How can you financially sustain the project? Community sustainability. How well is your project rooted in the community? How much support do you have? And the organizational sustainability. So how stable is your organization? Are you going to be a long-term partner? And you can cover those 3 areas. About this also, specifically, we do have webinars online, so you can check on our YouTube channel if you want to learn more about the project sustainability itself. Cross-cutting issues, I've mentioned that word before. They are additional issues of areas that intersect with the main project and can be easily integrated into the project without losing focus on the main goal. Usually, or not usually, often, a donor will tell you what cross-cutting issues they want to see included. Often it's gender equality, environmental sustainability. So even if you apply for a project that is for education, you should still make sure that it's environmentally sustainable. If you apply for a project that is focused on environmental sustainability, you should still try to make it to also look at gender equality. You shouldn't just employ men. You should still include those elements. So think of this broader field of sustainable development and try to include as many of these topics as possible. And sometimes donors will specifically tell you which are the cross-cutting issues that you need to include and need to reflect in your proposal. Yeah, and with that, I come to the end of the prepared presentation, because those are the parts of a normal proposal. I see there's many questions, so I went through the presentation a bit quicker, so we have time for all the questions to get to them. Just a reminder, we do have lots of online courses that go more into depth in all those issues. For example, the log frame one we have here, how to raise funds from USAID, or online fundraising from US foundations, and our flagship course, the 5 obstacles on your way to fundraising success and how to overcome them. Check philantropia.org to see all those courses. There's lots of opportunity there. And today you can get those courses at 35% off with the coupon code fundraise. So if you see anything that's interesting, use the coupon code fundraise, sorry, and you will get 35% off. There's also some free courses that we offer. So I really recommend you go back to that that page and see what's there that could be interesting for you. We also offer a donor database, donordatabase.org, where you can search a database for potential partners and for potential donors. So it's easier for you to find foundations that could be a good fit. So you can try that out on donordatabase.org. I think it's free for a week. And then after that, it's a paid service, but also at a very reasonable price. Yeah, and now we still have time for questions. Please put your questions in the Q&A box if you have any, because then I can go through them one by one and I can make sure that I don't miss any. The first question by Taukir, do you have any samples or templates of a good written concept note or a full project proposal? We have a couple on our website on philantropia.org, but also on proposals4ngos.com. There's a section that says samples. So we uploaded a couple of proposals, sample proposals, and concept notes there that you can check. We also have an ebook that is very reasonably priced, and I think it has 20 plus sample proposals and concept notes in it. It's I think the Guide to Proposal Writing, or it's called something like that. I'm not sure. Maybe the team can put the link to that into the comments to this book. I think it costs $10, and it has many sample proposals and everything we talked about today in text and a bit more detail. Okay, there's the question by Tom. At the proposal stage, to what extent do donors want to see a detailed implementation plan? To make a detailed plan, we need to spend time, so we don't want to spend more time than needed, but enough time to demonstrate that we have thought through how to put the project into action. Yeah, well, I think you already gave your answer here. It depends a bit where in that stage you are. If you apply to a super competitive call where you know hundreds of others are applying, and it's the first stage, well, I wouldn't put too much time into that detailed implementation plan, because as you said, it's time consuming, and if you don't know if you're going to get it, then don't do it. Explain very well that you are the specialist, that you know what you're doing, and make that clear. But in general, I think it's more important to have a great justification for your project, to have a great section on your objectives and goals. And then if there's still some some questions or maybe something not as formulated as you would otherwise have in the section with the implementation plan, I think donors can go, okay, we can still ask that, but they do need to be able to understand the justification. So I think the focus on that is more important. But yeah, you need to show that you can implement this. And again, if you found a foundation, networked with them for 6 months, and then they say, oh, send something over, well, then you know that they're just considering you and that the chances of success for you are much higher. So I think then I would invest a little bit more time to maybe figure out a detailed implementation plan and maybe take some more time. If you know, okay, chances that we'll get this are very high, then I think you could maybe spend a little bit more time. Question 2, also by Tom, how could we be using AI such as ChatGPT to help us in proposal writing? We do have a full webinar about this. We've talked 1 hour about this on our YouTube channel. So if you want to learn more about that exactly, please check that out. I think there's lots of potential. There's also some risks that you have to consider. So first of all, for donor research, I don't like AI yet. There might be some specialized systems already, but what's for free, like ChatGPT, Perplexity, etc., doesn't do a very good job in donor research. Because it doesn't necessarily choose the donors that would really be a good fit, because it has limited information on that. Of course, ChatGPT can be a great help to make sure that there's no typos, etc., that you have good language if you have to write the proposal in a different language than your own. That is super helpful. You can also, like I said, one of the most common things I see, and I sometimes proofread proposals, is this mixing together of results and objectives and activities. And for example, one time where I was super crunched for time, I just put that whole section into ChatGPT and said, okay, please tell me what's the objective here and what's an activity. And it did that quite well. It can help you, for example, if you have to fill out a log frame and you don't know, like you can't think of any good indicators. You can say, oh, this is my project. Which would be a good smart indicator for this? Which could be a smart objective for this? ChatGPT can help you structuring things very well. I've heard that ChatGPT writing a full application in the beginning, when people were not that maybe didn't look out that much for it, won a European Commission contract. I don't know if that's true or if it's just a rumor. But there's many ways that it can help. Of course, you have to be super careful. First of all, you should never share confidential data with ChatGPT because it's stored in the US without a lot of guidelines. So you cannot upload like attendance lists and stuff and say, do something with this. And then it still makes lots of mistakes. If it doesn't know something, it still makes stuff up. So you can't rely on it to do research for you. If you have a text and you want to make it shorter, for example, that's a good use because that is, if you provide the text, it can work with that very well. But everything that it kind of comes up by itself, you have to double, triple fact check because it still hallucinates a lot of stuff. So it's a bit tricky. It can be, or it is a great help in a lot. But you always have to check and be careful and aware of the risks as well. If you want to learn more about the opportunities, again, I think on the YouTube channel, we have a webinar about AI use specifically. Then a question by Geoffrey. I'm a bit confused on why project is necessary. Does it refer to the positive impact of the project, or the project is necessary because of the negative consequences of the problem? Yeah, it explains the issue you want to solve. Like, why is that issue an issue? If you want to, I don't know, if you want to enhance school attendance by girls, then you have to explain why they don't go to school in the first place. And of course, you can also cover the effects of that leads to worse jobs in the future, less financial security, etc. You can cover the whole thing. about this as well, we do have, because this is covered very well in the webinars about the project plan, and the problem tree methodology that we use for that. We do have full webinars about these topics. I think it's called either problem tree, the problem tree methodology, or how to develop a project plan. And they are all on our YouTube channel. The project plan webinar was actually last week, so it should be on the top of the list. And we explain much more about that. Maybe you can also refer to that. But basically, this why is your project necessary? What is the background of your work? Why do you want to do this? And you can go at it from different ways. You can explain positively the changes that will happen through your project, but start by saying, this is the situation now. This is the data that shows that this problem is really an issue. Then another question by Russell. What's the balance should we strike between objectives that are achievable and inspirational? Well, that depends a bit, obviously, on what kind of budget you're applying for. Objectives should always be achievable. Maybe not, obviously, not too easy. The donors want to see value for money. So if they feel like, okay, they're going to give you a lot of money and those objectives could be achieved with much less, then that's not going to help you, or they're not going to make the decision for you. Sometimes, like, if it's big calls, you will see that they already give you the goal that you have to achieve or that you have to contribute to. So then that kind of dictates the objectives. Obviously, they shouldn't be too easy, but they need to lead to that goal. And with the goal that you formulate for your project, you need to be competitive with other organizations that apply for this. So I think with the money that you apply for, with the money that you have in your budget, it needs to be realistically achievable. And then I think those variables already define what you can do with those. Yeah, another question about the problem statement. Again, please refer to the project plan webinars. We've talked much more about that as well. Yeah, the proposal writing ebook. I don't know if that is shared in the chat already, or otherwise the team will share, or if it's not possible right now, we will include the link to that ebook in the follow-up email that we sent. So you will receive it through that. But it should also be relatively easy to find on our website, philantropia.org. Under resources, the ebook should be there. And then a question about the theory of change. Again, I keep saying this, but we have so many webinars because we've been doing this for a long time. There's a webinar about the theory of change as well that you can find on our YouTube channel. So maybe hop over there, give us a follow, and check for that video. But basically, the theory of change explains for your entire organization what you want to achieve and how you will go about achieving that change. So describing your mission. It's a different word for a mission statement, but also includes a little bit more information about how you get there. Okay, I see that the team now has posted the link to the proposal writing resource guide. So it is in the comments now if you want to check it out. Yeah, so the theory of change basically describes what you want to achieve and how you want to achieve it. What your theory is, how things will change towards that goal or that mission that you formulated for yourself. We will also take that up. Maybe we'll repeat the webinar in the future, but there already is information about that on our YouTube channel. Okay, I think those were all the questions here in the box. Thank you so much for attending. Again, if you want to learn more about any of these things, check out the YouTube channel or philantropia.org. The resources we have with the coupon code fundraise, you can get a 35% discount. If you have any questions, if you're interested in training for your organization, whatever it might be, please get in touch at info@philantropia.org. And I hope to see you all in our budget webinar in December. And then maybe we'll do one last one in December as well before we finish up the year. Thank you so much for attending, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.